No, people don't even say that anymore. That's now a boomer joke.
No, they're gonna bring it back.
Oh, okay.
All good jokes circle around. So that means that one won't.
Jeez. Well, if all good podcasts circle around, Saucy, then I think we're probably out of business. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Runeterrable Radio. I am your host, The Blevins. With me, as always, is Saucy Mailman. What's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going?
The variance of looks on the guests' faces when we just go into the intro it's
one of my favorite things.
It might be my favorite thing of the show. But
speaking of, we have a guest.
We have a fantastic guest today. We have who I know him from the Magic the Gathering scene, an old SCG grinder, now a professional Twitch streamer and content creator, and who has recently moved into Runeterra a bit. Jeff Hoogland, welcome to the show.
Whoa, you nailed the last name. You can tell you know who I am.
I mean, I literally have watched you on SCG streams for many a match back in the day.
Once or twice.
You know, it's funny. The coverage person told me they used to send out a sheet to head judges for those tournaments with like grinder name pronunciation guides, and mine would still just get slaughtered every time almost.
Yeah,
really.
Yours is an easy one. I get called Belvins. I've been called Belvins my whole life.
I could see that.
Because people just can't see where the L is in my name, which I almost am kind of missing that because now people just say I'm either that I am Ninja or that I'm Ninja's brother. So that's which is really weird because Ninja's real brother actually has the same name as me in real life, and his Twitter name is The Bearded Blevins, so you could see why that would actually be. But that is neither here nor there. Jeff, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about you today, as well as your endeavors into Runeterra and just about Runeterra in general. And I mean, the listeners, the regular listeners know we're going to go off on tangents and all that. So, Jeff, let's start with a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your background. I know you actually come from a teaching and mathematics background.
Yeah, so I have a master's in mathematics from Illinois State here, where I live in the middle of Illinois. During my undergrad, I had an education minor, and I student taught a high school classroom for a semester there, and decided that I'd rather work with adults. So I spent, before I moved into content creation full time, I spent some time adjuncting at like four or five different schools in the central Illinois area, because most universities would rather pay people slave wages via adjuncts than hire people full time.
True. That is true everywhere.
Welcome to America.
Correct. Gig workers.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say you would rather work with adults, yet you are streaming to Twitch chat all day. That seems a little bit of a...
Well, you see, I also have a family. So I have a 5 and a 6-year-old, and in a lot of ways, working with Twitch chat for extended periods of time has prepared me well to work with the 5 and 6-year-old.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, that tracks.
And children in Twitch chat, you have to speak slowly and repeat yourself frequently.
True, and put them into timeout when they say silly things.
Correct. Yep.
So how do you go from a teaching background to sort of, obviously, like I mentioned, I know you from the SCG grinder days. How do we get from teaching to playing Magic, at least semi-professionally or professionally, to where you are today in content creation?
Well, it starts with a very supportive, understanding, maybe slightly crazy significant other. You have to have someone to support you. So my oldest son is 6.5 now. And before he was born, I was working as a systems analyst for a major insurance company and just playing Magic kind of part-time for fun while doing that. And then when my oldest was born, I moved into kind of a stay-at-home dad role, which, babies need a lot of attention, but there's also a lot of downtime, right? So I was like playing games and writing articles and playing online a lot in between diaper changes. And then during that time, I spent a lot of time playing on the SCG tour. Like you said, I qualified for 2 of their 3 initial Players Championships tournaments that they had. I top aided a dozen or more of their, several hundred to 1,000 player open tournaments. And then all while doing that, I was streaming and producing content part-time for all of those years. And then I never expected content to become a full-time job, but it was like the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. I started streaming a little bit more because actually the SCG tour was having a Player of the Year race, and I played in every open except for 1 in 2017, and I missed getting Player of the Year by some small number of points at the last invitational that year. And I was like, well, I missed this thing. I'm done going to all of these tournaments. I'm just going to do a little bit more content. And then as I started doing more content, the sub numbers started going up, and I sat down with my wife and I was like, look, I know we said I wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, but that was when I was kind of working in corporate America, just a paycheck job. And it was like, this looks like it could maybe scale up into be like a job that I genuinely love. So we hired a sitter at the beginning of 2018 to watch the kids 15 hours a week while I could stream a little bit more. And then it kept picking up some more. And then over that summer, we started daycare full time for them so I could actually do it as a job 40 hours a week.
Wow, that's a great story. And I think a lot of folks so first, a lot of folks think that Saucy and I do this full time, which we don't, at least not yet. So I think it's a very, it's a relatable story for a lot of us where we're working our, like you said, paycheck jobs for 40 plus hours a week and then doing content on the side. And it's a really, I just think sort of a great story to look at, really, to not just, oh, well, I'm going to be a content creator tomorrow, so let me quit my job.
Yeah.
Let me just throw all this away and just dump everything into Twitch, and then
realize that it's a lot of work and really hard.
People always ask me well, when did you know that you could do it as a job? And I'm just like, well, when it started paying me it could be a job, right? I always tried to make good content, but I didn't go, okay, we're going to do the volume that is a job until it was like, okay, this is feasible and practical to do so.
Yeah, exactly. I can now I can eat food still and keep the utilities on. Yeah,
and of course having a family, just it's not just
and even that too, I'm super fortunate that my wife works full time for a major insurance company still, and we get good benefits through them. I make an okay amount of money on Twitch, but for people that live in the United States, they know this, health insurance for a family of 5 as independent contractors, $2,500, $3,000 per month on top of all the other utilities. So I'm not even sure at my level I could do this as a job if we didn't have my wife providing us traditional benefits through hers.
Yeah. Crazy to think that. But I think that's just it's a story that I don't think it's told enough. Right, just because oh well, Ninja hit it big.
Yep, exactly.
Who's my brother?
It's easier about the ninjas and the Dr. Lupos and
the few and far betweens.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. The fraction of even myself making a full-time living, I'm a fraction of a percent on Twitch, right? And I'm not even within reaching distance of someone like Lupo or Ninja.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I looked at my stats the other day or a couple weeks ago, and I streamed heavily for 2 weeks and then stopped, of course, because that's my MO. And my stream, which is literally nothing, I'm in the top 0.8% of streamers on Twitch.
Yeah, if you're breaking double-digit viewers, you are probably single-digit percentagers, top 1%. Yeah,
which is insane to think. I just think that's something to really think about and let that sink in, because it's a story that a lot of us are living.
It's funny. My wife and I, going back to my SCG experience, I finished second on the SCG tour that year. I chased Player of the Year, and I qualified for 2 other Players Championships over 3 years. I broke even in the amount of money I spent traveling and buying Magic cards and the money I made with those records. But in a way, I mean, not even a way, almost certainly, I wouldn't have the job I have today if I didn't have that starting bit of notoriety from SCG.
Right.
And my wife and I often refer to that, well, that was my unpaid internship for 3 years.
Right. Yeah.
Seriously, though.
That's a really interesting way to think about that. Because, I mean, that's what internships are, right? I mean, getting that experience
Pretty
is...
much.
I mean, getting that experience is invaluable in a lot of ways. So, yeah,
and it's tough too, right? Like, you said even just getting into double-digit viewers, like that puts you in the 1% because most people are streaming to 1 or no viewers on Twitch, right? And like, you just think about how you watch Twitch as a watcher. You never scroll past the top dozen or maybe dozen and a half channels, right? So like, especially in a big game like something like Fortnite, for example, where there's hundreds of people, most of those folks are never getting clicked on.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I know myself and Blevins, and probably most people know you from Magic the Gathering. I mean, I can remember watching you play Reanimator and Legacy many, many years ago in SCG. That's actually when I found out about you, because I was actually playing a lot of Reanimator and Legacy at the same time. But,
yeah, it was the one Brainstorm deck I really played.
Yeah. I love Brainstorm. I've got so many hundreds of copies of Brainstorm. So have you other gaming background? Anything other than card games, or have card games kind of been your MO?
So I started playing Magic when I was 10 years old, which is almost 2 decades ago at this point. And I played a lot of first-person shooters and MMOs during high school and undergrad. Obviously, my friend group, we played a ton of Counter-Strike Source.
Nice.
We played some Guild Wars was our MMO of choice because most of us couldn't afford $15 a month for World of Warcraft. We're just like lucky to have computers that could play games.
Yep.
But yeah.
So then kind of just started playing Magic and fell in love with Magic.
Yeah, and like Magic, it was a game that you could play casually very easy, right? Like the majority of people that play card games don't know that they exist on places like Twitch. I remember for the longest time, for years, my Magic experience was we drafted in my basement or my buddy's basement once a month with a group of like 15 to 20 of us, depending on who could get there.
Yeah, it is insane to think that like when we're so entrenched in like the Twitch community and you go and like I'll talk to one of my buddies back from high school that's like, oh, you play Magic? I'm like, yeah, I watch, do all this stuff, and they're like, oh, do you know so and so? I'm like, yeah, I like have played against them a bunch of times. Like, what? It's crazy, like how like unconnected some people are to that, and then there's also like, oh, wait, you can watch people play Magic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah, I always tell people when people get angry, like decisions companies have made, and it's just like, well, the fact that you like go and watch this game on Twitch, like automatically puts you in a different demographic than a majority of the people that play this game. So like your perspective is definitely not the majority, almost certainly.
Yeah, like I used to live above a card store, literally. Like I was roommates with the owners of the card store, and when the type of person who would come in and just like have the like $100 bill in their hand and just hand it over, crack a box, and then just start piling up the rares to sell back to the store to crack open another box while still standing at the counter. Like when you're a competitive player, you're just like, it's like literally just burning money to not even get anything, just to open the cards. Like that's a different breed of person. I mean, that's who Wizards wants, like in a vat, constantly doing that. But like,
well, I remember too, like when I was grinding, like I owned a modern deck because that format didn't rotate, but I basically never owned standard cards. Like you post on Twitter the week before, you like send a bunch of Facebook messages, you're like, who's got cards? And like the morning of the tournament, you're like, I'm getting cards from you and you and you.
I mean,
yeah, that's how it always went too. Like, especially early on, you're like, all right, I have the cards for this deck, but I want to play this deck, but my friend has all my Thrag Tusks I need, and so you're always trading around. That was kind of like the fun part about, traveling around back when we had Grand Prix and all the SCGs and stuff.
Yeah.
It makes me want to ask you, so switching from traditional paper Magic even to digital Magic, what was kind of like the pros and cons? How was that when you started playing, when you started streaming more, how did that kind of, change things for you?
Well, I think the biggest boons to digital and paper are just kind of different. Like I think for a lot of people, even myself included, the biggest boon to paper is the social aspect of it, right?
Mhm.
Like part of the reason why I was playing so many tournaments is, we were driving 4, 5, 6, sometimes even 10 hours one
Yep.
way in a weekend to get to these tournaments. So it was like, and most of us weren't making good money, and the tournaments barely paid for themselves. So you'd have 4 or 5 people in a car, and you'd have 2 dudes in each, double or queen
Oh,
size
yeah.
bed if you were lucky in
Yep.
the hotel room.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes someone would sleep on the floor to pay a little bit less, and the people was the big part of it, right? The gathering.
Yeah.
And then when you transition to digital is more so about like the actual gameplay, I
Mhm.
really feel, because you can just play so many games compared to paper, right? There's
Yeah.
no shuffling or anything. And honestly,
Yeah.
even that's even the biggest difference between there's 2 Magic platforms now, the Magic Online and the Magic Arena, is Magic Online works really hard to emulate paper Magic, so it's
Mhm.
very rigid and slow in how the application works, which makes it feel very different.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
I mean, it is definitely rigid and slow in the passing of priority, but also it's just a rigid and slow program that was made in 1997. It is awful. Even
Magic Online is older than 1997,
okay.
sir. Is it? No,
Well,
that might be 97,
actually,
right? It's 2020, right? Now, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
97 might be accurate.
90,
I actually remember the first time I installed Magic Online, I installed it from a CD-ROM and
yes.
updated it on my dial-up internet.
yeah, dude.
I got it from the green box from I think 8th edition that had Royal Assassin on the front of it, and I think it came with a promo Sarah Angel card. Maybe. I don't know. Or maybe it came with
Was it Thorn Elemental? I think
no,
mine was the 7th edition.
yes,
one.
that's the 7th edition one. I think it was either no, it was Elvish Champion. It was an Elvish
Yeah.
Champion promo that you got for
Okay,
buying
yeah, that was 8th.
Yeah, that
8th
was
edition,
that
yep.
was when I started, was in 8th edition. Or right around there. 8th edition Mirrodin was when I started. So yeah, it's crazy to think. And I mean, at that point in time, it was a kind of an innovative product. It was the fact that it was the same product 10 years later that really got me to leave it.
Well, it's not even the same product. I remember the first version of Magic Online. You had like an avatar that like physically walked up to tables to play games with people.
Yes.
Yeah, it was actually more of a video game than like
Than it
what
is
their
now.
current product in 2020 is. Yeah.
Let's go back. Let's get what is it called? Oh, Vanguards. Let's have Vanguards with let's just make Momir Basic a thing everywhere. But also like I want to be able to play the like lesser played Vanguards as well, and I want to be able to walk around as my Vanguard and like look at the draft table with like the Birds of Paradise sitting next to the like Thorn Elemental. So
The
good.
dream.
So good. I'm curious to get your opinion on this too, Jeff, because obviously you, even more so than Saucy and I, are very experienced, or were very experienced in the Magic the Gathering IRL tournaments. And yes, the camaraderie, yes, all of that. Going and going to the tournaments and traveling is great. But do you ever miss anything about playing in actual tournaments?
I don't know that I actually miss the actual mechanical parts of the tournament.
Yeah.
Even like rounds digitally can take some time, but good golly, can they take a long time in person. You guys said you played tournament Magic. Like, if a round lasted 80 minutes sometimes with a 50-minute timer, like that was quick a lot of the time. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, we were only 25 minutes
No,
over.
only
That's great.
only three matches went to time, and 5 judge calls happened.
Yep. Yeah, when you're there 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., don't get a lunch break.
No.
I remember there was a weekend where I made the finals of a legacy tournament on Sunday, and we finished the finals at 1 a.m.
Yep.
for the Open, and it's funny. They actually ended up restructuring their Open series shortly after that because they kept getting in trouble with the convention halls.
Yeah.
They're like, it's like midnight, you need to get out. Your
Yeah.
contract is
Right.
done.
We once had to finish the finals of a PTQ. So I'm from Buffalo, New York. So we drove up to Toronto, Canada, with about 5 of us. Two of the people in my car made it to the finals of the PTQ. We got kicked out of the convention center and had to play in a Tim Hortons. The finals in the Tim Hortons. No. Yeah, it was a legendary story, but when it's 1 a.m. in a Tim Hortons and you're explaining to staff why there's a bunch of sweaty nerds who aren't going to buy anything in your store playing cards and being very loud, at the time, it's not the most pleasant experience.
Yep.
But I think back to, like, every once in a while I'll be like, man, I kind of want to play in a tournament. Like, I miss that, like, exhilaration in the prep. And then I think about sitting and just, like, being in the tournament hall for any amount of time. I'm like, I don't miss it at all.
Yeah.
I don't miss that
I mean,
part.
like, I love, like, playing events from home and being able to, like, even if there's downtime between rounds, like, all right, I'm going to go hang out with the kids and the wife, and I'm going to set my timer to ding when the next round should pair. And
you're like, whoa, I can go make a sandwich. This is great.
Yep. I don't have to pay $6 for a pretzel. Like,
exactly.
If you're lucky. I do actually really like the format that they've done for I think they're calling them the Arena Opens, the like $2,000 like first prize.
The async tournaments really good. Except for, did you see the issue people had with joining it the second day?
No, I didn't.
So for people who aren't familiar with how Arena structures that, they have a 20-hour day one where you can basically pay $20 to enter this thing. Mm-hmm. And if you get a certain number of wins, a certain number of losses, you qualify for the next day. You can do that all day for 20 hours.
Yep.
But for the second day, they made people join the event in a 2-hour time window span. And if you didn't join in that 2 hours, you couldn't play the event. And you didn't have to play your matches or even start playing your match in that 2 hours. You just had to log into the client, hit join, and then maybe finish your matches later.
You had to just check in, essentially.
Correct. You had to check in a 2-hour window.
On the client. My.
That's awesome.
I just like, they always, and that's one of our points is what led me to Runeterra is like, Wizards so constantly just gets so close to like, this is fantastic. It's perfect. It's everything I've ever wanted in a tournament weekend. And then there's something like that where it's just like,
let's talk about that because we've talked about Magic for a while. This is technically most of the time a Runeterra podcast. So I think
really?
everyone can assume you're playing some Runeterra. So what brought you to Legend of Runeterra?
So I had actually never touched a Riot product before, and I was just kind of looking for other stuff to do. Twitch has a program called a bounty board that you can be a part of when you hit a certain size, and basically what that is, developers post their games or like ads that they want you to play on your stream for a minimum dollar threshold, and then if you play it for the certain threshold, you get a payout based on your viewers for a percentage. And I was like, oh, there's a card game up here. I'm looking for other things to try.
Yeah.
Let's just try this. So I think it was an hour or 2 hour segment on that, and I played it, and I was like, oh, this is like, seems great. So the following day, we played 2 hours again with not a sponsored segment, and I think I played almost every day for a week that first week.
Yeah, it really is just like, especially coming from Magic, it's so like, Saucy and I both went Magic to Hearthstone and now to Runeterra, and it takes so much good from Magic and like so much of the good like UI and UX from Hearthstone and like marries them together in such a nice way that it's like
I think one of the best things Runeterra did is it found this really elegant middle ground between this super rigid, slow priority system that Magic has, where both players respond to literal everything, which drags
I've
even on a fast
blow my nose. Oh, correct. Let me see if that resolves.
Correct. Yeah, like exactly right. And versus Hearthstone, where everything just happens, right? So this where fast and slow spells use a stack-like substance, but units just come into play, it's just really elegant in a lot of ways to give that counterplay in parts where it's really important, but also doesn't make the game drag in other parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really seems like they hit the nail on the head in a lot of ways to really encapsulate the best parts of the competitive and interactive aspects of MTG, and as well as the like, hey, we're not going to necessarily have an hour-long game one for Hearthstone games.
And I think they even did a good job of avoiding some of the bad interactive parts of Magic. Whereas like reading Runeterra forums, I've seen there's been like Deny is a hot press card that was eventually pushed up to 4 mana before I started playing. But like, people who've never played Magic have probably never experienced playing against a deck where you literally never resolve a spell.
Right.
Yeah.
And the fact that in Runeterra your units just happen is great, because it's this middle ground between, well, sometimes I can deny things and stop them, but I'm never going to have everything I play just say, no, bad Jeff.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard it's hard to explain that to people who've not played games like Magic, or, where there's counter spells. Because I was like, deny seems fine, says the Miracles player here.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just hard to, let's talk about how Force of Will works and things.
Yeah, and like looking at like the things the community from Runeterra feels is like not okay. It makes me kind of take a step back and realize, like, wow, my bullshit tolerance for Magic is like really high, because like this feels bad. This isn't even like a blip on the top 10 feels bad in what I've been playing for the last decade.
How would you like it if everything was an elk, my friend?
That was kind of like that was one of the funny jokes when Blevins and I first started the podcast, because when the game first came out, elusives were a hot topic. People were like, they can't be blocked, blah, blah, blah. We're like, if the most degenerate thing in the game is flying, then we know that the game's in a good spot. Like, we're feeling good about Runeterra right now.
Yep. Well, to be fair, in Runeterra, Windrake did draw a card for a long time.
That is true.
That's true. It was good.
I guess Windrake cantrip Windrake would it be standard playable?
I'm not sure that it is necessarily. And another perspective too, and this is really interesting coming from Magic, how the power level translates. Like 4 mana unsummon in Will of Iona was too good and needed to be nerfed to 5 mana in Runeterra, whereas like unsummon is frequently not a constructed playable card in Magic. And like one of the things that translates really interestingly is, because you draw a card effectively every turn in Runeterra, whereas in Magic you only draw every other turn, the value of drawing a card is lower.
Right.
Because your hand's already full more often compared to Magic, where you value that higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when I'm reading, in Discord and Reddit and just folks in the LOR community talking, I feel like I just find myself saying, "Oh, sweet summer child," just so many times, like you don't even know. It's like what Cawblade, Affinity, like all these things, like you don't even know what power
I
is.
remember, I think it was patch 1.4 or 1.5 when I started playing, and I was just like idly scrolling Reddit, and people are like, this format sucks, there's no diversity. I'm like, have you heard of this card called Reclamation in Magic? And it's just like
Teferi Time Raveler.
Like you don't realize the silver spoon that is hanging in your mouth while you.
It's a good place to be, where we're sort of spoiled. We're spoiled with riches.
Yep.
and honestly, we didn't write this down, but I wanted to ask this because it's kind of related. How have you found the diversity of like playable different archetypes and decks in Runeterra?
Well, it's astonishing. For one, for people that aren't familiar with my content, my basic shtick is a majority of what I play is viewer submitted decks. So like people send me a donation and I play their deck on my stream for 90 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how we're doing and what the run's like. And for like the last year of Magic, that shtick's basically not been working, because their formats have been so bad and lacked so much diversity that like the average idea that someone wants to send in, it just doesn't make for good games because it just gets beat
Right.
up and down what you're doing. And whereas like Runeterra, like I've been playing almost every day for over 2 months now, and it's like I'm still like we played Zombie Ash the other day, Ash
Yeah.
reanimating ashes with harrowing. I was like, wow, this is nuts. And we won most of our games, and like
Yep.
had never played against it, had never played with it, and it was just like this new thing. And that's in a card pool that's 2 sets, right? Like
Right.
2 months later, with 2 sets of cards, I am still finding new things to me. And I'm sure people that have been playing since the beginning have seen it all by now. But even just the fact to me that with how shallow the card pool is, that I can still find things 70 days later is it speaks volumes to what they've done with their cards.
Oh, absolutely. And I as someone who both Saucy and I have been around in Runeterra since the actual beginning, and so Saucy, you're way more in the deck brewer side of the scale than I am, but just observing how people play out the meta, there is still a lot of untapped potential in a lot of these cards.
yeah.
I think we're getting into, so I follow TFT as well, and that like is even more so than Runeterra and Magic, is very much like big streamer says this comp is good, therefore everyone plays it, and because everyone plays it, its win rate goes up, and they look at the win rate site and they say, oh, this is the best comp, it's unbeatable, and just like everything is focused on that. It's a little bit like that in Runeterra and in Magic as well, but there's so much unexplored territory in LOR. Like, it might not be S tier, but there are like the harrowing Ezreal deck just kind of came out of nowhere like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and it's like all those cards were legal and mostly the same from the beta of the game, yet no one ever played it. It's like the we were talking about how I don't know the names of any cards. The 0 mana copy, make a fleeting or a ephemeral copy of a card. Fading Memories. That card is just like, when I saw that card in the deck, I'm like, why is it in here? I'm like, wait a second. It's a 0 mana burst spell for Ezreal and also gives you an Ezreal trigger if you target your opponent's thing. It's like, this card is insane. How come we haven't seen this in any Ezreal build yet? And like, it's how many months into the game and no one has played it until now, or at any sort of competitive level. So
yeah, I mean, we're getting close to the next expansion, and I'm still creating decks that brand new archetypes and things. Like, we're playing these weird Jay Medarda decks all yesterday. But even think about things like Sejuani. Like, when the set for Rising Tides first came out, people weren't playing Sejuani. Like, oh, she's too slow, not good enough. And now everyone's like, oh my god, Sejuani's busted. She's so strong, because people realize how to play it and how to play with her. So it's crazy to me how every single week it feels like the meta either completely changes or a new deck appears and warps the meta.
And even like this
crazy.
patch, right? Like, I feel like we've gone from Sajani and Ash being like, people are like, oh, that's S tier, I can't beat it, to like a lot of my matches today were against deep variations because people realize, well, that's good against the mid-range deck.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for Emusives to make its rise in the meta.
Soon.
It has a cult following. Don't worry, I'll get it there. Hey, I've gone up like 150 master points with that deck, which isn't a lot, but it is not going down in master points, which is a big thing.
It's still winning.
It is winning, and when you have an elusive moose, you're ready to go to town there. So one thing I wanted to, I know we're kind of jumping around chat and podcast listeners, but that's just how it's going to happen. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Jeff, was actually, I was thinking about it because I played in a MTG Arena event, and then I saw Michael Jacob lose like a very favored matchup to just mana screw like entirely in game 3 of an event, and then you tweeted something about lands in Magic versus a system like Runeterra, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on like the mana generation system in a game like Runeterra versus having lands, because it's a little bit, I got in a little bit of a heated discussion with someone on Twitter over like, oh, you absolutely need lands, and I'm like, I don't ever want to see a land again. Where do you sort of fit on this scale?
the basically only positive thing you can say about lands is they add a deck building decision making process that you don't have when you remove them.
Right.
So the fundamental question is, does that decision making process outweigh the negative side effects that are associated with it?
Right.
And I think when you're newer to Magic or don't have a good mathematical foundation, mana bases are they're like mysterious and they feel really interesting. But like when you have a good heuristic understanding of like what goes into these things, it tends to be trivial to put these things together optimally. Like I mentioned, my shtick is playing decks people send me, and the thing I make the most changes in, it's like, well, you're like trying to cast a double black card on 3 and you have 13 black sources in your deck. It's like, mathematically speaking, you're going to miss, half the time or more on that, and just missing on those. I think those numbers are interesting when you're newer and not really thinking about it. But when you actually have a good baseline, you're like, oh, this, especially in formats like Magic Standard format where the lands you have to pick from are a really small pool. It's like, oh, I'm playing a 2-color deck. I just play all the dual lands.
Right.
Yeah.
And then even in Magic's bigger formats like Legacy and Modern, you're like, oh, I play dual lands and fetch lands that can fetch those dual lands. And even then, like, there's a couple of like utility lands that you kind of put in, but even those tend to be pretty linear, easy to make decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just I was very frustrated at the time, so I left it. I did the smart, mature thing. I'm getting wise. I'm getting wise in my old age. I just said, I'm just gonna end this with let's agree to disagree, because it's like I've never once, and I might just be a different type because I just don't gain any joy out of making a mana base. I just want to know what is the optimal mana base to so I can cast my spells, because casting spells is the most fun thing, besides drawing cards, the most fun thing to do in Magic. And if I can't do that, I'm not having fun most of the time. And the counterpoint was, well, you're taking out this level of decision making, like you mentioned, Jeff, and it's another level of complexity in decision making. But I find myself making this argument a lot and across a variety of different games, because people tend to say, oh, well, Dota is more complex than League of Legends, therefore Dota is better than League of Legends. And I'm like, if you, in Magic, every time, or Runeterra or whatever game, if every time you hit your opponent's face for damage, you had to then play a game of chess versus that person to see if that damage resolved, that would increase the complexity of the game.
Yeah.
But I don't think that would make the game better. Maybe it would, because chess is pretty cool. But that's the extreme, right? Like, if every single thing needed to be like there's an additional check of a game of chess, it doesn't make the game better, right?
To speak ill of the dead for a moment, someone in chat crapped on Artifact earlier, and I think the fundamental thing that Artifact did wrong was that they mistook in-game complexity for quality gameplay.
Yes.
I think was a fundamental issue with that game and why it wasn't a core good game. Like, it was definitely complex and skill testing, but it just wasn't a good game.
Yeah. Every single matchup, whether it was draft, whether it was a control deck, whether it was the most aggressive deck you could play, felt like a traditional blue-black, like Nephalia Drownyard is the only win condition mirror match.
Yeah.
Every single time. And while that can be fun and novel for a bit, it's just draining after a while. Like, there's a quality of life calculation that needs to be made at some point.
In contrast, I think two of the two things that Runeterra does better, in my opinion, than any other card game I've ever played is the first thing they nailed is the length of the game. Magic games, especially in the last year and a half, they spend a lot of time in what I refer to as garbage time, which is where the game can no longer be won by one player, but both players are continuing to take game actions for the next 5, 10, 15,
Right.
God, even 20 minutes sometimes if someone's not conceding because, oh, well, what if they mess up? Or what if they're hit by lightning or their internet disconnects? It's just like, whereas Runeterra, once your deck kind of does the thing, the door, it doesn't leave your opponent hanging there. The door closes quickly and you get to the next game and you're not just left dangling.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing I think Runeterra does really well is I think Runeterra has the highest in-game player agency of any card game I've ever played. If people aren't familiar with what that jargon means, player agency refers to the chance that your decisions you make while playing impact the outcome of your game.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we were talking about lands earlier, talking about how, well, people think lands make interesting decisions during deck building. They do sometimes, but in contrast, they remove a bunch of decisions while you're playing, right? Like there's so many games of Magic where like, I just don't play, or they just don't play. They flooded, or they stumbled, and they didn't have meaningful choices. They mulliganed, they kept, and they died.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who's played Magic, we've all been in that situation. We're like, oh yeah, this 2-land hand is good. And then you're like, all right, 17 card draws later, we're still on 2 islands. Sweet.
Yeah. The number of games of Magic I've queued up where there wasn't a game of Magic that was played is far larger than most other games, especially Runeterra.
So, something that frequently comes up when I play non-Magic card games like Runeterra is people are always like, well, Jeff, do you think this game needs a best of 3 mode for its ladder? Because I'm very adamant I'll only play Magic as a best of 3 game. And the reason why I require Magic basically for my enjoyable experience to be best of 3 is you basically need 3 games to get 1 real game a lot of the time. Like 2 out of 3 games of Magic are often one player made little meaningful decisions and died.
Yeah.
Whereas like in Runeterra, when I'm playing decks that are like good decks that aren't just like brews, occasionally your brews fall apart or like you mulligan and get all 5 drops, but those games are like so few and far between when you're making good choices and playing good decks. It's very refreshing.
Yeah, we actually kind of talked about this a couple of episodes ago, and I am interested because I do think, I don't know if we necessarily need a best of 3 format, and maybe it just doesn't play out now because there's a lot of the decks in Runeterra right now aren't they are optimized, but even the worst of matchups I think are like maybe a 60-40.
Correct. Yeah, there isn't like in Magic, there's a lot of 30, 70, 80, 20, sometimes even 90-10 game 1 matches where like you literally only win if they don't play Magic.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you said you played Reanimator in Legacy. That deck's like the king of 90-10s, right? Like,
same thing.
Absolutely. I'm wondering if that is because when it kind of goes back to maybe the difference between a native LOR player who hasn't played Magic and someone who does come from a Magic or even a Hearthstone background, where the matchups that are 60-40s feel worse than maybe they actually are. I'm wondering if Runeterra would benefit from something like a sideboard in a best of 3 format. Like maybe not now specifically with the format, but if we get to the point where there are like even more aggressive decks, or like even when like Darius Aggro was out, that kind of raised the minimum bar for entry for a lot of decks. I guess I don't know, I'm kind of thinking out loud, but do you think that this is just a symptom of the format now, or the game in general?
I think in a tournament setting, if you wanted to play multiple games with multiple decks perhaps, or some type of sideboarding like thing to reduce variance per round, I think that's very reasonable. But I don't feel like there's enough non-games in Runeterra, at least as is, for me to really want that as a ladder experience. Playing more games lets the better player win a little bit more often, and like if you have rounds that are going to be longer anyways, you can afford to play more games. But
that makes sense. It's one of those things that we've just kind of been thinking about because it is interesting.
One of the things to consider too, and this is something that I think Magic really struggles with, is when you add sideboarding specifically, it adds a layer of complexity to the game that to newer players is very intimidating. Because sideboarding at its core, being good at it, is a deck building exercise. And a lot of people who aren't good at sideboarding, they're trying to like take 1 card out and put 1 card in, as opposed to looking at 75 cards and building their best 60 or 40 or whatever the deck size would be. And when you have tournament Magic, it's hard for players to translate that if they're just playing best of 1, right? Like it's hard to be invested in something you can't take home and do yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we touched on it a little bit. Let's talk about sideboarding. How do you feel about sideboarding, like the tournament formats? What do you think of the current formats we have in LOR? Do you think there could be a better format? Do you think sideboarding could be a thing for a format for tournaments?
I think you could have a sideboarded format, but I think from a core engagement perspective and audiences feeling invested, the multi-deck formats tend to resonate more with people.
Yeah, I think to add to that point as well, because right now Riot does not have a prescripted this is the tournament format, this is the competitive format. I mean, technically it's the ranked ladder, which is just best of one, play a deck, go. But there is no tournament level, like, hey, it is 3-deck conquest ban 1 or 3-deck 2-deck conquest
like a
no
pro
ban.
Tour,
Yet, at least. So what my core philosophy is that whatever, and this is something I think Magic does well or has done well, is the Pro Tour format or the competitive format, which is best of 3 for the most part until you get to like the top 8 of a Pro Tour or whatever, is that, and that is what you are playing in most of your competitive games, whether it's F and like all the way from F&M up to the Pro Tour. You are playing one deck, best of 3, 15 card sideboard.
Well,
throughout the whole
they're
thing.
kind of struggling with that actually as they're moving into digital, right? Because Arena, the bulk of the games played are best of 1,
right?
And Wizards has been trying to restructure some of their tournament formats to appeal to that wider range of people, because sometimes the deck with the sideboard isn't directly applicable to best of 1 and vice versa. And they've even had issues where they've had to ban cards only in best of 1 because the answers to them are only sideboardable, or cards that you would never put in a main deck, that then like takes this divide and drags it even bigger.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that was like one of the, I don't even know how the tournaments are named in MTG anymore. One of the
neither do we. They replace it every 6 months.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm not alone there. The Mythic Invitational. I don't remember. Like one of the first ones that they played on Arena in person. Obviously, pre-COVID.
Yes, that was an invitation. Mythic Invitational.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where you like brought 3 best of 1 decks or something? Or was that what it was? It was something. It was some weird format.
It was 2 best of 1 decks, and I think you had to win with both or something like that, or like you played one and then you played the other, and then you could pick between the 2 if there was a game 3. I think what it was. It wasn't 3 decks. It was like 2 decks, and then you picked for the last one.
Right.
And
my overarching point is that whatever is played at the top level, I want that to be emulated at the lower levels, at least as closely as possible. And I think even Hearthstone, which has a pretty diverse and big esports ecosystem, I think that they missed on that. And I think LOR has emulated a lot of what Hearthstone esports has done, where it's like 2 or 3 deck conquest. Like that's great for the tournament grinders, and I think that's what the tournaments are focused on now. But for Riot or Blizzard for Hearthstone and Magic, like I want my low level casual people seeing and playing the same thing that's being played at the high levels in terms of format. I don't want it to necessarily be, oh well, Hearthstone is 16 deck win with 5, whereas you're playing the ladder and you're playing 1 deck. So
I think one of the reasons why that multi-deck format is so inaccessible in Hearthstone too is the price point, right? Like gameplay aside, one of the things that Runeterra does better than literally any other digital card game out there is consumer friendliness, right? Like you can just buy the deck you want, or the free to play is actually free to play friendly because Riot understands they can monetize cosmetics well, and telling someone you need to get 3 Runeterra decks is completely different than telling someone you need 3 Magic decks or 3 Hearthstone decks.
Yeah. Oh God, buying 3 paper Magic decks just makes me kind of sick to my stomach. Or at least
you want
to
get
my
into
wallet.
Modern? Here's you got to play 3 decks. Like,
Well, and honestly, the thing that's most refreshing sitting in Runeterra is I never hearing the words when I put out an idea. Well, that's a great idea, but there's these people that speculate on cardboard as a stock market,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that idea would upset them. So we can't upset the speculators that are using this as a stock market.
Yeah.
It's just a game for fun.
Right.
What?
My
That's crazy.
problem with it is that I really well, actually, I don't care if this is a Wizards bashing podcast. I don't care. I don't care if I'm blacklisted. I'm not even listed.
From playing the tournament you don't know the name of.
Yeah, I'm never gonna get invited to the Magic Tation. No. I completely forgot the point I was gonna make now.
Sorry.
What were we talking about?
Who knows?
Monetization.
Monetization, yes. The problem is that Wizard plays both sides of it. They're like, oh, well, this is just a casual game for children, but also for stockbrokers and investment bankers. Like, pick one.
Yeah.
Like, because like I've been on not really as much of on the speculation side, but when I was playing actively, I like picked up a bunch of foil treasure cruises and dig through times because I wanted to foil out my deck and like thought that they'd be legacy playable and whatnot, and they'd keep some of the value, and it's like I just lose a bunch. And it like, even though like, yes, it's, you know, they should make decisions based on the game, it's like, well, I just don't want to buy your cards then. If that, so like I just get screwed over one way or the other, right? Like either like my cards have value or they don't. Pick one. Don't keep flip-flopping it, you know?
I mean,
So,
we've all,
yep.
anyone who's played, you know, any form of Magic, especially if you're playing Eternal formats, knows a lot of times they're afraid to, you know, ban cards or change balance because of how expensive the decks are. Like, I remember I had just finished Birthing Pod, like, not long before the pod ban
Rip
in Modern,
Birthing
and I was
Pod.
like, well,
my
shit, I
favorite
just
deck.
spent like $600 on this deck, and now
Yeah.
it's worth about $30. Like,
Yeah.
I hate the
it's a
good
bit
side. I hate the good side of some finance things in Magic just from playing. Like I foiled out a blue-red tempo deck in Modern at one point,
Ooh.
and then like expenses came up, and I remember trading foil Scalding Tarns for regular Scalding Tarns plus $100 bill.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
just like,
Yep.
all right, sure. Like I bought
Yep.
these foil Scalding Tarns for like $60, so
Yeah.
Wow.
ship it
Yeah.
back.
I
Yeah.
did finance an entire trip to GP Orlando and the ensuing 5 days at Disney by buying Goblin Rabble Master. So I really can't.
Yeah.
For
Well,
like
I-
50 cents, so I can't complain that much.
I know a lot of like the Magic Pro teams. Like when they knew they broke it going into the Pro Tour, they
Yeah.
bought up dozens or hundreds. That's how they paid for their testing houses,
Right.
and how they really made money if they
Yeah.
lost on the weekend was, you know, they made. I remember we broke the card Hanger Backwalker for a tournament.
Oh yeah.
And we had a couple hundred
Yeah.
of those at quarters a piece, and they got to $18 a piece or
Yep.
something like that at one point.
It's pretty good. And like, you know, that's kind of fun to do, but also like it's predatory and all the bad things about it as well. But okay, so we're quickly running out of time here, and I wanted to just at like a high level, Jeff, because obviously, you know, I think still our core Magic or came obviously from core Magic and are just starting to sort of dabble into Runeterra and do more Runeterra content. What are your goals for Runeterra? What do you want to get out of the game and the community?
You know, I guess right now I'm just kind of waiting to see where they go and what they do. I
Mhm.
think the core game engine of Runeterra is one of the best core games I've ever played, honestly.
Mhm.
And I think the only big thing Magic has over Runeterra at this point is the card pool. Like, you know, Magic has
Right.
its history. It's got 26 years worth of cards, but
Mhm.
I also think that Riot seems to understand that, and their plan to try and do set releases every 2 months. I think
Mhm.
if Riot releases 6 sets in the next year, this game has a really, hopefully a bright future if they hit those deadlines and fill their card pool out quickly.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely very ambitious. And also out of those 26 years of cards, I mean, how many of them are like 5 mana 1/2s that tap
Sure,
to
yeah, and that too, right? Like I think there's actually a chance that like with Runeterra's 2 sets they have right now, they have close to the same number of constructed playable cards as the 8 sets that Magic Standard format
Right.
does because of just how much draft chaff Magic has per game that just aren't constructed playable. So like if Riot continues to aggressively balance their game when their card pool is 5 times as large as it is right now, I honestly think they could be creating a game that like what most people have envisioned they've wanted from these card games, where like there's just a range of strategies and you can kind of pick the one that fits your mold and hang out and play that one. You said I built my brand on Magic. It's really tough as a non-variety streamer to branch out into other things. Even Runeterra is probably one of my more successful non-Magic games that I've streamed, and even that, my average viewer count on Runeterra is like 60 to 70% of what I see average on Magic. One of the beneficial things about that from the business side of my job is that viewer count's not the end all be all. For people that may or may not know, ad revenue doesn't account to a whole lot, right? So like one of the things I regularly do is I pull my Twitch subs every 2 to 3 months to find out where they sit. And Runeterra has resonated with the people who actually pay me more than any other game I've ever played on stream. Like I think my poll that I posted from a couple of days ago was a little over 50% of my 2,000 people that are subbed to Magic said they're interested in Runeterra, and it's one of the things they want to see on my channel.
Nice. That's good.
Yep.
Yeah, that is awesome. So when are we going to see the LOR Hooglandia open?
LOR Hooglandia open. So the logistics of running a tournament without a tournament client or something like MTG Melee are tough.
I know.
I've played in arena tournaments that are run on like smash.gg, and to say the experience was rocky and clunky would be understating it.
Yeah.
That is true.
Even like the MTG Melee site that we use is less ideal than an in, and like they've knocked their software out of the park, I think. And even they're still less ideal than like if I could just open a thing in the client and go, I'm going to limit this to this many players. And I also have more optimism in Riot from a software perspective than I have in Wizards from a software perspective. And if I was a betting man, and I play card games, so clearly I am, my money is on Riot having a spectator mode in Runeterra long before Wizards ever has a spectator mode in Arena. Which, for people that have watched my Arena tournaments, we literally provide coverage by requiring our competitors to share their screen to Discord, and then I window capture 2 instances of Discord and splice them together in OBS so you can see them at the same time.
Okay, so that's
tough.
I'm trying to think if that's better or worse than capturing people's Twitch streams. It's similarly bad. I've done both for the tournaments that we've captured.
Yep. I found the bandwidth is a little bit less for people to stream to Discord, and you don't have random people putting themselves or overlay elements or their sub notification in your stream.
Yeah, it is definitely. Plus, like for an invitational tournament, it's fine if you have 8 or 16 people that you're saying, hey, you have to stream. But when it's an open with X hundred people, it's like I'm not going to be like, okay, well, you can't sign up for this tournament if you don't have a Twitch stream. It's like
like you have to have a streaming computer.
Yeah.
Well, like and my tournaments that I run that we provide, and honestly, we've had a number of people comment that like the coverage myself, my 2 buddies, and my wife do is like better than what Wizards has put on.
Well,
because Wizards doesn't require their people to stream people can't join my Magic tournaments that I run currently without having a streaming computer.
Right.
I tell them if we call you for a feature match and you can't do it because of your bandwidth or your computer, we're dropping you from the event.
Right. Yeah.
Because the point of the event is coverage. So it's like
exactly.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, that's the same thing because people ask us like, when are you guys gonna do a Runeterrable tournament? We're like, once
we have wanted to for so long, I just can't do it.
That was literally our first topic when Blevins and I first drunkenly met each other. Was oh my god, let's start this thing so we can have these tournaments. Then now we're like, we would like a spectator mode first, please.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff. So we're just about out of time here, but we have the final and most important question from the show. What is your favorite Guardian in the game?
As something of a sea mammal myself, they just put new ones in today, and the darker spirit dragon is fantastic.
It's so good.
Really, really good.
Yeah. It is really good. As long as you don't say T-Hex, I'm happy.
You get right on out of here.
T-Hex is garbage. Gromp gang for life. There's a reason that Gromp There's a reason that the blue Gromp is great.
Gromp was my favorite.
Yeah, because he was the least played Guardian because he was hot dog shit.
Get
so they
out
had to
of
make a
here.
decent one.
Gromp
so
gang
they
for
made
life.
The dark one.
Uninstall T-Hex. I'm actually considering rage buying every single other cosmetic, not just the Guardians, every single other cosmetic except for T-Hex, just so I have
everyone in chat disagrees with you. Thank you, chat. I love all of you. Blevins is off the show.
Chat, type a 1 if you hate T-Hex and unsubscribe if you like it. No, I'm kidding. Okay.
Whoa. There's a second part to this question.
Oh, that's right.
Because with every good Guardian is a good game board. And what's your
That's true.
board of choice right now, Jeff?
The pirate board is S tier music.
Ooh, yes.
I do enjoy me a sea shanty.
And it's got the little crab dude who runs across.
Yep.
I like that.
I will say that I want Runeterra to up their board game, because if there's one thing I can give Hearthstone credit for, it is that I can click on everything, and even just the tactile, like clicking on the dirt and getting a little like.
Well, the latest Epic tier boards let you do that.
A little bit.
It's not the same.
It's around the edge. They don't have full
Yeah.
breakdowns and stuff yet, but.
I want to give
Runeterra.
I want to give Runeterra credit because I'm heavily biased towards Runeterra. It's not the same level. I want it to be. It's not.
That's because when you're playing Hearthstone, that's the same feeling you get is shuffling your cards constantly.
Yeah,
you're, clicking on the shit. You're
I have to. I literally just have cards that I hold on the side and I'm shuffling in my hand because I can't click on my little dirt. Yeah.
Are you admirable?
Yes, I am admirable.
He is doing that as well. We're like, hey, we're doing a podcast.
Yeah, just kind of. He's like, I'll come on the show as long as I can shuffle cards. Okay.
Of course,
sure.
It's a Kiki too. Yeah.
Okay, Jeff. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Now is your time to sell out, shout out, do what you will. The floor is yours.
All right. You can find me just everywhere at Jeff Hoogland. That was something Teenage Jeff realized was smart enough to do, so I'm easy to find. My goal is to put out a Runeterra deck video every single day. I stream it live on Twitch in the afternoons. Usually start about 2 p.m. Central on my Twitch channel, and then it goes up on my YouTube channel shortly after there every evening. Sometimes we do 2, sometimes we do 1. You can follow me on Twitter for lots of card games and progressive political takes. That's all I got.
And
Awesome.
And just to make sure, if you are new to following him, it's spelled Hoogland.
Yes. You can join.
Make sure. Yep.
Hooglandia. Saucy, where can people find you on the internet when you're not here on the show?
Yeah, I'm all my stuff just at my website, saucymailman.com. I stream on Twitch Monday through Friday in the evenings. Everything's just Saucy Mailman. Lots of Jay Medarda and PuffCap decks.
Love it. Well, chat, you can find me on Twitter at @the_Blevins. You can find my Twitch when I decide to stream again, twitch.tv/theblevins. But we do stream the show live there on Wednesday, so check it out if for no other reason than that. But you can find the podcast everywhere that you can find podcasts, as well as on YouTube at Runeterrable Radio, where we've got runeterrable.com and DeckPics.Live. We still want to see your deck picks. Send us your deck picks, please. And also, the best place to find all of our content is discord.me/Runeterrable Radio. But that is going to be it for this episode. Thank you again, Jeff, for coming on. But for Jeff, for Saucy, I'm the Blevins, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Talk about more Legends of Runeterra.